Hello and welcome to Crime Watch Daily Updates. I'm your host, Anna Garcia. It was every parent's worst nightmare. On April 20th of 2012, Sergio and Becky Celis tucked their 6-year-old daughter Isabel into bed in their Tucson, Arizona home. They kissed her goodnight, and that's the last time they saw her alive. The next morning, Sergio went to wake up his little girl, but found that she was nowhere to be found. Her window had been smashed and the window screen was on the ground. Becky called 911 as the family searched everywhere for Isabel. Police leads led nowhere. Detectives were stuck. However, in March of 2017, Tucson Police announced that they found human remains in a remote area of the county, and they were positively identified as Isabel. 3 years before Isabel's remains were found, investigators discovered the body of a missing 13-year-old Maribel Gonzales in the very same area. Detectives pinpointed the location thanks to a tip from someone saying they knew a man who knew where Isabel was buried. That man was identified as Christopher Clements, and it turns out his girlfriend at the time is the one who called in the tip. In September of 2018, he was indicted on 22 charges, including 2 counts of first-degree murder and kidnapping in connection with both Isabel and Maribel's deaths. In September of 2022, a jury found him guilty of first-degree murder and kidnapping. His trial for Isabel's death is scheduled now for February. Let's take a look back at the case of the kidnapping and murder of a 6-year-old who would be inextricably linked to another innocent girl's demise.
In the wastelands of the Arizona desert outside Tucson, investigators have just made a grim discovery: the remains of a little girl, Isabel Celis. An adorable 6-year-old girl kidnapped and taken through her bedroom window in the dead of the night.
I didn't even come and check on her. I should have come and checked on her.
A dramatic new development in the cold case of a little girl lost.
The Tucson Police Department will continue to actively pursue those responsible for any kind of involvement in Isabel's death and disappearance.
Is Isabel's kidnapping connected to the case of another missing girl? Will investigators find answers in this surveillance video shot the night Isabel vanished? And will DNA solve this cold case that has baffled police and terrified families in Tucson? Isabel was the baby of the Celis family, adored by her parents Becky and Sergio and her 2 older brothers.
She has her brothers around her fingers, so whatever she wanted them to do, they did. And she loves to paint, she loves to color and do things like that. And baseball, she loved playing baseball.
It was just after 11 p.m. when Becky laid out Isabel's softball uniform for a game the next morning that she kissed her daughter goodnight.
But I'm like, okay, Isabel, you're getting really tired. It's probably time for you to go to bed, and you have to get up early, and so does Mom.
The next morning, Becky goes to work, and Sergio goes to wake up Isabel for her game, but finds her bed empty.
Boys are waking up at this point, and so I'm like, do you know where your sister's at? And they're like, no. And started looking everywhere, and then started saying, boys, help me find her. I don't know where she's at.
Sergio and his sons frantically search the house and yard. Then one of the sons comes to him with chilling news.
And I'm looking in the garage, and that's when Sergio came running in saying, Dad, her screen's laying on the back, her window's busted out.
Sergio races to the backyard. He finds Isabel's bedroom window wide open. The screen is on the ground. It looks like someone snatched little Isabel from her own bed.
Kind of, freaking out at this point, came back in here, called Becky at work.
I can't remember the drive at all. I just know that I was freaking out and scared, and I just out of my mind.
Becky calls 911,
barely holding it together.
So who noticed her gone? Your husband? My husband. I went to work this morning at 7, and I didn't even come and check on her. I should have come and checked on her. Okay, you're almost there, ma'am. Okay.
In the backyard, police find a set of work boot footprints near an electrical box and on top of a gas meter. Then a shocker. Cops turn the spotlight on Sergio, Isabel's father. While Becky's call to 911 appeared to be panicked, Sergio's was anything but.
Hello, I need to report a missing child. I believe she was abducted from my house.
Is Mom there also?
She had just left for work. I just called her and I told her to get her butt home.
Sergio's explanation? He couldn't bring himself to believe his little girl had been taken.
I didn't want to be frantic. I didn't want to be panicked. I wanted to be as articulate as I could. I didn't want to be misunderstood.
As the months pass, the Celis family is put under the police microscope.
From the beginning, the police said everybody's a person of interest. We're okay with going through the ringer and having everything part of our lives investigated. And by all means, go right ahead.
What does Sergio say to people who assume he might have something to do with Isabel's disappearance?
Nothing. I mean, I really don't know what to answer to that, because other than, you're wrong.
It may appear to be suspicious behavior, but Sergio has never been named a suspect.
All the family members have been interviewed, and we haven't ruled anybody out.
Could there be clues in this surveillance video uncovered by Crime Watch Daily? It comes from 3 store security cameras pointing toward Isabel's street. At 1:24 a.m., a large van passes through. 2:36 a.m., a private security vehicle stops and hits the lights. Then at 3:32 a.m., a figure crosses the front parking lot. And a little later, another figure of a man crossing. Then at about 8:45 a.m., you can see Isabel's family searching around the house. And here you see Becky racing home in her SUV. But never did we see an image of a little girl. Next, Sergio hires his own private investigator. He points the finger at another family member.
This same individual shipped his car off to another state, then hired one of the best lawyers in Tucson, and bingo, another red flag.
And the possible link between Isabel's murder and another girl. The discovery of the remains of 6-year-old Isabel Celis dramatically turned a kidnapping case into what could be a murder investigation.
We appreciate the fact that this case has been very traumatic, not only for the family and friends of the family, but also for the entire larger community.
Cops keep details of their investigation under wraps, but they say the discovery of Isabel's remains in the desert was not by happenstance. After Isabel was snatched from her bedroom, investigators have been looking at everyone close to her, even her own family.
It feels like the investigation has never gone any further than right here. That's what is so frustrating.
That frustration drove Isabel's parents, Sergio and Becky Celis, to hire a private investigator. His name is Jerry Snyder, and the person he believes to be the prime suspect, a shocker.
We looked at one of the relatives of the family and his friend that basically didn't have 6 hours that they could explain as to where they were the day that she went missing.
That relative, Justin Mastromorino, Becky's cousin. Becky and Sergio say he previously lived with them for more than a year.
We need her home safe and sound,
Mastromorino made this impassioned plea the day Isabel vanished. But within 2 weeks, Justin himself disappeared from Tucson.
Shortly thereafter, this same individual shipped his car off to another state. He then hired one of the best lawyers in Tucson, a criminal lawyer, and, bingo, another red flag.
Police never named Justin a suspect. He denied our request for a comment, but the friend who claims he was with him the night Isabel disappeared did speak to our Andrea Isom.
How you doing?
All right. So it was April 20th, 420. Yeah.
Tell me what it is. You can say it.
Well, all right, cool. Well, it's the National Weed Smoking Day, so of course we drank and smoked weed and did all the fun stuff.
The Celis family's private eye claims Sebastian and Justin partied until about 2 a.m., waking up around 8. What does Sebastian say Mastromorino was doing during those 6 hours?
But you admit you don't know 100% for sure if he did leave that night.
Well, of course I don't. Like I said, I was asleep. But no, I guess not.
Crime Watch Daily wants to give Justin Mastromorino the opportunity to tell us what he knows, if anything, about the disappearance of Isabel.
Justin, we just have a couple of questions. It's not a big deal.
So Andrea went to his mother's place in Florida. That's where the Celis family PI says he shipped his Jeep.
This is the house. This is Mom's house. This is where Justin, we're told, is staying.
I don't know what else to do. I think we have to do it. Just hope to God he's in here.
We tried every door, no response. Cops have been frustrated. Many of the 2,200 leads they've gotten have taken them to a dead end.
Some of them have shed some light on some things, others haven't. We're still working this case. It's an open, active investigation.
And now there could be a new direction in the investigation. Crime Watch Daily has learned exclusively that Isabel's remains were found just a quarter mile from the body of another missing girl, 13-year-old Maribel Gonzales. Maribel vanished a little over 2 years after Isabel disappeared. Tucson cops aren't saying whether the two cases are connected. After the terrified community learned that Isabel was dead, friends and neighbors held a candlelight vigil.
She's a little girl, and we all have kids. Every year I would tell my husband, tell my family, we would just talk about it and really just pray one day she would make it back home.
But Isabel never came home. That show of love and compassion from strangers is small comfort to a family who had hoped and prayed their precious little girl would someday be found alive.
More than anything, I am so sorry. I am so sorry I couldn't protect you. I wasn't there. I wasn't there to stop this from happening to you. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Please. Please. Please hear us. I'm so sorry. I couldn't protect you.
Police say they won't release any more details on the case because they fear the, quote, unintended consequences it could have on the investigation. Detectives did, however, ask anyone with information to call 520-882-7463. Callers can remain anonymous.